Part 2 of the build. At this stage, I made another build board to work on the deck and inside the hull. This also keeps the shape of the hull when the shadows are taken off the first build board. I used PVC piping to make pieces to hold against the side of the yacht. Now is the time to remove the shadows, excluding the first and last where they will have their bottom sections cut off later. Once they are removed, then the internal hull can be sanded to smooth out the planks, and also remove excess glue. Once completed, I added some fiberglass in areas where I thought the extra strength would be beneficial, covering it with epoxy. I also removed any excess fiberglass not removed from the outside. I added a second gunnel plank around the internal part of the yacht, again to provide extra strength. Before fitting out the internal parts of the hull, I set up a laser across the waterline to give me a reference point, and provide a way of measuring the distances specified in the design. Using the laser, I placed the bulkhead into the hull, using the design dimensions. This also acted as a way of pushing the hull out to its correct width. I purchased a combined fin box and scoop to put into the hull. I used the outline of the box and marked it down onto the hull, and then cut it out. As the scoop is above the level of gunnel, I did some calculations to see how much of the scoop needed to be removed to get it at the correct level. Also, the fin needs to be located at the correct height, defining how much of the fin box that can be removed. Another adjustment to the fin box is the mast well. I used the dimensions from my widget to give me the depth and where I wanted to add the locating pin. I also fiberglassed the bottom to seal it. The fin needed to be cut to the shape of the fin box, and this was done by creating a template from a piece of ply and then transferred to the fin. At this stage, the fin box has not been epoxied into the hull, and again I used a laser to ensure the fin was vertical, and then completed the final setting in place. The next stage was to add the support for the winch, and I used a fiberglass piece with a slide that holds the winch. To secure it into place, I built a small wooden structure around the fin box to hold it in place. Part of this build, I had to reduce the depth of the bulkhead. I now laid out the rest of the yacht to ensure I knew where each component would go, and what internal supports I needed for these and for the deck that was to come. The extra supports included strengthening for the shrouds connected to the fin box, as well as adding T-nuts for the shrouds and pulleys. For the rudder, I chose to use a direct connected servo, as provided by David Creed. The fiberglass mount fits into the hull, and the rudder rod mounts straight into the servo. To set up the rudder box, I used the rudder and aligned it with the keel, and also confirmed it was vertical from the back and side using the laser again. The last part before doing the deck was to finish off the areas that would support the deck. Having spent some time thinking about how I wanted to access the foredeck and have access to the winch, I decided to put the access point at the top across the center plank. To provide support for the piece of plank to be removed, I added another wooden support to the deck. I made two triangles joined together in the middle to provide extra support for the jib hinge loops, which were to be added once the ply deck was added. The rear deck was traced out first and transferred onto ply with an overcut area, and then epoxied onto the hull, ensuring all the holes lined up correctly. The ply was then trimmed to the correct size. The front deck was again traced out and the access point added. Note, this picture shows the original idea but was modified to have an access from the top. The ply was epoxied down firstly by doing the port side and then the starboard side to make it easier to hold down the ply. I used a number of tools, clamps and tape to hold the shape against the frame. It should be noted, it wasn't possible to get the bow shape as per the design, as the ply wouldn't hold that shape, so it was reduced in height. The wire loops were added to the foredeck, and the full deck was given 2 coats of varnish to finish off. The final piece was to add the bow bumper. The remaining components were added to the yacht. All that was needed now is some masts and setting it up, and adjusting the weight to meet the rules. I hope this 2-part build of my yacht has been useful, because when I started I didn't have the experience or knowledge to build a boat, and found it difficult to find the detail information I needed. If nothing else, it is a record of my build that I can look back on.